Chapter 1: The Ledger. The scent of old paper and dust still clung to her father's office. It had been 3 weeks since the funeral, yet the room remained untouched, as if his absence might be temporary, as if he'd return any minute to pick up the conversation they never finished. Elena Rossi stood by the mahogany desk, her fingers tracing the faint ring of a forgotten coffee cup. Everything around her was neat, orderly, his way of keeping chaos at bay. But chaos had found them anyway. The business was gone. The creditors had stripped the company bare, leaving only files, silence, and whispers about debts she didn't understand. She opened drawer after drawer, the sound of sliding wood echoing in the stillness. Invoices, receipts, shareholder letters. But then something different. A plain envelope, sealed in red wax. Her father's handwriting scrawled across it, slightly trembling from the illness that took him. If they come, ask for Matteo Vitale. The name meant nothing at first, but as she whispered it aloud, a faint chill moved through her, like a name not meant to be spoken loudly. She folded the letter and tucked it into her coat pocket, trying not to imagine what kind of they he had meant. That afternoon they came. 2 men in dark suits, too polite to be law enforcement, too calm to be ordinary debt collectors. They introduced themselves as representatives of an investment group that had financed Rossi Freight Lines before its collapse. Their smiles were practiced, their eyes empty. "Just routine verification, Signorina Rossi," one of them said, his accent smooth, his pen poised. "We need confirmation of your father's remaining assets and any outstanding documents." She gestured to the boxes stacked behind the desk. "Everything's here. You can take what you need." The man's gaze flicked to her trembling hands. "You seem nervous." "I just lost my father and my home," she said tightly. "Forgive me if I'm not a perfect hostess." He smiled again, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "You have courage. I see where you get it." And just like that, they were gone, as quietly as they came. But they left something behind. A card, resting neatly on the desk, black with gold lettering. Vitale Group, Matteo Vitale. That evening, rain slid down the window like ink bleeding through glass. Elena sat with the envelope in her lap, rereading the line until it blurred. "If they come, ask for Matteo Vitale." It was past midnight when she finally dialed the number printed on the card. A man's voice answered on the first ring, smooth, low, and composed. "Vitale Group." Her throat tightened. "This is Elena Rossi. My father was—" "I know who you are," he interrupted gently. "We've been expecting your call." "Expecting her?" "Please don't worry," the man continued. "Your father was a man of honor. He helped my family once. Long ago. I'd like to repay that debt." Elena's pulse quickened. "Repay it? How?" "Meet me tomorrow morning. Vitale Tower, 10th floor. We'll discuss the details in person." The line clicked dead. The next morning, the Vitale Tower loomed over Milan's financial district, glass and steel, its mirrored surface reflecting the storm clouds gathering above. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and money. The receptionist greeted her by name and directed her to a private elevator. When the doors opened, she found him waiting. Matteo Vitale, tall, deliberate, immaculately dressed, the kind of man whose presence filled the silence. His eyes were dark, steady, unreadable. When he extended his hand, his movements were precise, controlled, almost ceremonial. "Elena Rossi," he said softly, "your father once saved my brother's life. I owe him a debt I can never truly repay, but I can protect what's left of his legacy." Her breath caught. "You mean the company?" "I mean you." He turned to the panoramic window overlooking the city. "The Rossi Freight contracts still hold value. My firm can absorb them, but I need someone trustworthy inside the process. Someone with your father's instincts. Come work for me. Temporary, of course, until the paperwork settles." Elena's head spun. It sounded like an offer, but beneath the smooth professionalism, she sensed something more, the faint hum of danger, wrapped in courtesy. She hesitated. "You want me to work for you?" "For my logistics division," he corrected with a subtle smile. "We handle imports, exports, compliance audits, and other matters that require discretion." Her stomach tightened. She thought of the rumors she'd overheard, that the Vitale Group wasn't just a business empire, that its roots ran deep into things not printed on balance sheets. But then she looked at him, calm, assured, offering stability when her world had collapsed. Maybe this was her only chance to survive the wreckage. She took the pen he slid across the table. The contract gleamed faintly under the light, her name already typed in elegant italics. Elena Rossi, personal assistant, Vitale Group. Her signature came out smaller than she intended. Matteo's gaze lingered on it for a moment before he folded the document. "Welcome to the team," he said, voice low and unreadable. "You'll find the address on the second page." She flipped it over and froze. The office wasn't listed under Vitale Group's financial division, but under a subsidiary name, Rovina Imports, located in the old district near the river docks, the same area everyone whispered about, where police cars never lingered and where people said the real Vitale family operated. Her father's voice echoed faintly in her memory. "If they come, ask for Matteo Vitale." She hadn't realized that asking him might cost her everything. Chapter 2: The Front. The morning air carried the faint tang of rain and diesel when Elena stepped out of the cab. The Vitale Group's riverfront headquarters didn't look anything like she'd imagined. No men in dark coats waiting by the doors. No secret meetings in back rooms. Just a modest glass and brick building beside the old docks. Cranes groaning, ships unloading crates, workers shouting in the damp air. If this was the heart of a criminal empire, it looked remarkably ordinary. Inside, the reception area gleamed with quiet efficiency. A row of clerks tapped at keyboards behind frosted glass partitions. The only sound was the low hum of printers and the rhythmic whir of the ceiling fan. A woman in a navy blazer smiled tightly. "Signorina Rossi? This way, please." Elena followed down a narrow hallway lined with framed photographs. Cargo ships, freight trains, warehouses. All legitimate, she told herself. This is just business. Logistics, that's all. Her new office sat adjacent to Matteo's. A minimalist space with a desk, a terminal, and 2 neat stacks of paperwork. A glass wall separated her from the larger operations floor, where dispatchers monitored screens showing routes and arrival times. "Your schedule for today," the assistant said, handing her a tablet. "Union calls at 9, customs liaison at 10, and a compliance audit at 2. Compliance, union, audit." Words that spoke of routine, not danger. So why did every man she passed wear an earpiece and a shoulder holster beneath his tailored jacket? By noon, she had reviewed half a dozen freight schedules. Everything was meticulous. Every truck, every invoice, every driver accounted for. But small details snagged her attention. Why did one driver's route always change? Why were certain shipments never logged through customs but marked as cleared, anyway? When she asked one of the clerks about it, he merely smiled and said, "Those are internal transfers, Signorina. Mr. Vitale prefers efficiency." Internal transfers, she thought. The term tasted like a half-truth. She met Matteo again at lunch. He appeared in the doorway without sound, his jacket draped casually over one arm. "How was your first morning?" he asked. "Surprisingly normal," she said. "I expected more chaos." Matteo's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "Chaos is for amateurs. My father thrived on it. I prefer order." He motioned for her to join him in the conference room, where a tray of coffee and small sandwiches waited. The gesture felt oddly considerate. He poured her a cup himself, black, no sugar, and passed it across the table with the same precision he applied to everything else. As she thanked him, she noticed how deliberate every move he made was. How he buttoned his sleeve, how he arranged the documents, how he listened without ever truly relaxing. A man always in control. When she asked about her responsibilities, Matteo leaned back slightly. You'll manage communication between departments. Keep the books consistent, the numbers clean. Accuracy is survival here. He looked at her directly then, eyes steady and unreadable. I chose you because your father understood that. Elena swallowed hard. You mentioned he helped your brother once. For a moment, something softened in his gaze. My brother was 17 when their car caught fire on the A4, he said quietly. Your father stopped and dragged him out. Everyone else drove past. He paused, the memory tightening his jaw. I was 13. I remember thinking that kind of courage couldn't exist in men like us. Elena felt the air shift, the first crack in his immaculate composure. He set his coffee down and stood. I pay what I owe, Miss Rossi. Your job here isn't charity. It's a settlement, one that honors both of them. Then, with that, the walls were back up, the tone professional again. Finish reviewing the ledgers before you leave. I'll need your report by morning. Hours later, long after most of the staff had gone, Elena remained at her desk. The hum of the servers filled the silence. The faint reflection of her face flickered in the monitor's glow. One ledger after another, line after line of shipping codes and balances, until she found something that didn't fit. Shipment number 4832, Ferrara route. One ledger showed 12 containers. The other, a private folder under restricted access, showed 15. 3 containers missing from the public records. Her heart stuttered. She opened the files side by side. Same date, same truck IDs, different totals. Someone had duplicated the entire system, one clean for the auditors, one coded for something else. And the authorization signature at the bottom? Matteo Vitale's. She leaned back, pulse hammering in her throat. The office was dark now, the city lights reflecting off the river outside. On the corner of her desk, Matteo's words still echoed in her mind. I pay what I owe. Maybe this job was repayment. But maybe the price was only beginning to show itself. Chapter 3: The Quiet War. The morning meetings at Vitale Group had changed. What began as quiet logistics updates had turned into boardroom politics delivered in soft voices and sharper smiles. The whispers started with names: Raphael, the uncle, the old guard. He controlled the dirty routes, shipments with no paper trails, the lifeblood of the family's darker income. Matteo, on the other hand, was building something cleaner, quieter, and far more dangerous: legitimacy. From her glass-walled office, Elena could sense it. The tension in every exchange, the coded looks between department heads, the way certain conversations stopped when she passed. She told herself she would stay invisible. That was the rule. Keep her head down, do her work, and disappear once her contract ended. But she couldn't deny the pulse of pride each time Matteo's tone softened when he asked for her reports. The subtle acknowledgement that she'd earned his trust. And that terrified her more than the rumors of the Mafia. By the third week, she'd learned to read the small signs of pressure. A late-night call from the docks. A missing truck from the Ferrara line. A board member postponing a meeting without explanation. The empire wasn't stable, it was shifting. Matteo was tightening control, restructuring routes, cutting out middlemen loyal to his uncle. But moves like that never went unchallenged. It was a Friday when the first public crack appeared. A union representative barged into the main office, red-faced, shouting about unpaid bonuses and unfair rotations. Behind him trailed half a dozen dock workers, soaked from rain and rage. Matteo wasn't there. Neither were his senior advisors. The receptionist froze. Security reached for their radios, and for one heartbeat no one moved. Until Elena did. She walked forward, voice steady though her heart was racing. "Gentlemen, please, yelling in the lobby won't solve anything. Tell me what happened." The representative glared. "Who are you?" "Elena Rossi," she said calmly. "Mr. Vitale's compliance liaison." That was only partly true, but it sounded official enough. One of the men stepped forward. "Our hours were cut. 3 of our trucks reassigned without notice. He thinks we won't notice when bonuses disappear." Elena listened, recalling the freight contract she'd reviewed that morning. Clause 14b, work rotation and hazard compensation. A clause no one had invoked in years. She took a breath. "Your contract guarantees hazard pay for route transfers if done within a 30-day window. I'll authorize the release pending verification." The room stilled. The union rep blinked. "You can do that?" "Yes," she lied. "And I'll make sure it's processed today. But I need your men back at work before port security steps in. That's my condition." The man hesitated, then nodded. Within minutes, the crowd dispersed, leaving behind the faint echo of disbelief. By the time Matteo returned, the lobby was spotless again. He found her at her desk, double-checking ledgers, pretending her pulse wasn't still hammering. "I heard about the scene downstairs," he said, closing the door behind him. His tone wasn't angry, it was measured, curious. "They were within their rights," Elena said quietly. Clause 14b of the union contract. It hadn't been honored since 2018. A beat of silence. Then a rare smile. Not the polite kind he wore for meetings, but something genuine, small, unguarded. "You read every line of that contract? I thought it might matter someday." It did. He walked closer, resting his hands on the back of the chair opposite her. "You defused a strike without a single call to security. My father would have sent a squad. My uncle would have sent a gunman. And you?" she asked, glancing up. "I sent you," he said simply. That night, she sat in her small apartment overlooking the tram lines, replaying the day in her head. She told herself the pride she felt was professional, that the warmth in her chest was just relief. But when she remembered his smile, the first hint of softness from a man made of discipline, she wasn't sure she believed herself anymore. Maybe she was beginning to understand why loyalty to men like Matteo was dangerous. Not because they demanded it, but because they earned it. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message. Unknown number. "Nice fix. You working for him? Or against him?" She stared at the screen, heart plunging. The message disappeared a second later. No number. No trace. Just a blank notification and the quiet hum of the city outside. For the first time since she'd joined the Vitale group, Elena realized someone else was watching her. And in this quiet war between men of power, she had just made her first move, whether she meant to or not. Chapter 4: The Offer. The invitation came in the least threatening way possible. A folded note slipped beneath her office door. No signature, just an address and a time. Cafe Marini, 11 a.m. Elena stared at it for a long while before deciding what to do. Matteo was in meetings all morning. Her tasks were routine. She could leave for an hour, maybe less. Still, something in her chest tightened as she stepped out of the Vitale Tower and into the sunlight. The cafe sat at a quiet corner of Via San Paolo. Elegant, old-fashioned, the kind of place where the porcelain cups clink softly and people talk in measured tones. She found him waiting at a corner table, reading the paper. Rafael Vitale. He rose when he saw her, impeccably dressed, silver hair combed back, a gentleman of another century. Signorina Rossi, he greeted with an old-world charm that instantly disarmed her. You've inherited your father's punctuality. And his eyes, I think. Elena hesitated before sitting. You wanted to speak with me? I did, he said, folding the paper with care. Family business can be messy, and you've become entangled in ours. I'm just an employee, she replied. He smiled, slow, patient, knowing. My dear, no one who works for Matteo remains just an employee. He doesn't surround himself with strangers. He surrounds himself with assets. The way he said it, assets, felt like a polite substitute for something colder. He ordered her a cappuccino without asking, as if he already knew what she'd want. I've heard about the docks, he continued conversationally. A union dispute resolved in a single afternoon. Impressive. Matteo doesn't trust easily, yet he let you handle it. It was a matter of reading the contract, she said carefully. Anyone could have done it. Ah, but no one did. He leaned forward, eyes sharp now beneath the veneer of warmth. You should know, Matteo is not a man who shares power. When he sees potential, he keeps it close, until it becomes inconvenient. Elena felt the shift, the way the compliment slid neatly into a warning. What exactly are you trying to tell me? She asked. That my nephew's ambition burns hotter than his loyalty, Raphael said quietly. He means to dismantle what his father built, the system that protected families like yours for decades. He calls it progress. I call it arrogance. The words hit their mark. For the first time since she'd started at Vitale Group, doubt seeped through the cracks of her certainty. She wanted to believe Matteo was different, that his pursuit of legitimacy was genuine. But Raphael's calm conviction made her question everything. Was she just a pawn paying a debt she didn't know? Raphael stirred his coffee slowly, the spoon clinking against the porcelain in an unhurried rhythm. You remind me of your father, he said almost fondly. He understood the cost of peace. Did Matteo tell you what he did for us? Elena frowned. He said my father saved his brother's life. Raphael chuckled softly. Yes, that was the public story. The truth is, your father did something far braver. He paused, studying her reaction. Years ago, there was blood between our family and another, the Fiori clan. Retaliations, bodies, endless loss. It was your father, an outsider, who stepped between us. He negotiated a truce, saved more lives than he ever knew. That's why Matteo protects you. Not out of charity, out of obligation. Her breath caught. Then he's honoring my father's memory, she said. Or using it, Raphael countered softly, to make himself look merciful while he sharpens the knife. The air between them thickened. Elena didn't know whether to stand or stay. Every instinct told her this conversation was dangerous, yet she couldn't leave without hearing more. Raphael reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. From it, he slid a photograph across the table. The image was glossy, recent, taken at what looked like a charity gala. Matteo stood in a black tuxedo beside a smiling man Elena recognized from the news. Alessandro Fiori, heir to the same family Raphael had just mentioned. They were shaking hands. The caption printed in small type at the bottom read, Vitale Group and Fiori Holdings announce new trade partnership. Raphael's voice lowered. That event was 3 weeks ago, the night before Fiori accountant was found dead in a hotel room. You tell me, does that look like legitimate business to you? Elena's pulse quickened. Why are you showing me this? Because, he said, leaning back, his tone suddenly gentle again. I think you're intelligent enough to see that not all debts deserve to be paid. Choose wisely, Miss Rossi. Matteo will burn anyone standing between him and the throne. And right now you're standing very close. He stood, leaving money on the table, and walked out into the sunlight, A polite exit, a perfect gentleman. But the photograph remained, its edges curling slightly from the warmth of her trembling hands. Matteo Vitale and Alessandro Fiori, two men smiling for cameras. And one dead accountant the next morning. The city outside seemed quieter than before, as if holding its breath. For the first time, Elena wondered if the man she worked for, the man her father trusted, was as clean as she wanted to believe. Chapter 5: The Code. For 2 days, Elena avoided looking at the photograph. It stayed buried under a pile of reports on her desk, its glossy surface catching light only when she moved a paper the wrong way, a ghost of doubt waiting to be remembered. But the unease Raphael had planted in her refused to fade. Instead, it grew roots, pushing her toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted. The deeper she went into the Vitale Group's financial ledgers, the stranger things became. Some invoices had perfect consistency, item numbers, customs codes, delivery dates, but others carried faint discrepancies. A half-digit off in a serial number, a timestamp misaligned by 1 hour, a route slightly changed. At first, it seemed like clerical error. Then, one evening, as she matched port call times to shipping manifests, she saw it, a pattern. Every shipment passing through Raphael's ports was shorted by a single container. Every shipment Matteo rerouted went exactly where it was supposed to. The conclusion struck like lightning. Matteo wasn't increasing illegal trade, he was starving it. Quietly rerouting cargo from Raphael's ports to legal terminals, draining the dirty cash flow that funded the old guard. He was fighting a war not with bullets but with spreadsheets. When she realized it, something inside her shifted. For the first time, the fear she felt around Matteo didn't come from what he might be. It came from what he was trying to be. He wasn't just protecting her father's memory. He was trying to build the future her father believed in, one without blood money. Her chest tightened. Admiration, relief, and something far more dangerous, the kind of warmth that made her forget who he was. That evening, she waited until most of the staff had gone. The soft hum of the office at night felt almost sacred. She walked down the corridor to Matteo's office, hesitated at his door, then knocked once. "Come in." He didn't look up immediately. His jacket hung over the chair, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. The dim light from the desk lamp threw lines of exhaustion across his face. He looked less like a crime lord and more like a man carrying the weight of too many worlds. "I need to show you something," she said. At her voice, he glanced up, eyes sharp again. "What did you find?" Elena placed a tablet on his desk. "The Ferrara shipments. The anomalies, they aren't mistakes. You're rerouting them away from your uncle's docks." Matteo's expression didn't change, but his stillness said everything. He leaned back slowly, studying her. "You decoded the ledgers?" "I wasn't trying to spy," she said quickly, "but I had to understand. People keep implying you're just another Vitale. I needed to know if that was true." "And what did you decide?" "That you're smarter than all of them," she said softly, "and possibly more reckless." A faint smile touched his lips. "You should have been born into this family. You'd have survived it better than most." He rose, walking toward the window where rain streaked the glass. "That photo Raphael gave you," he said, voice low. "You've seen it." Her pulse skipped. "Yes. It was taken at a charity gala. Raphael wants you to think I'm partnering with Fiori. In truth, that man," he paused, his jaw tightening, "was under federal watch. The meeting was a sting. I was buying time, not loyalty." "Buying time for what?" He turned then, his eyes meeting hers with a rare, unguarded honesty. "To finish what your father started." Elena froze. "What do you mean?" "Before your father died," Matteo said, stepping closer, "he told me there was another way. That power doesn't have to mean blood. He believed we could build something legitimate, A structure that wouldn't need men like Raphael or me. I didn't believe him then. He stopped within arm's reach. I do now. The silence between them was electric, filled with everything they didn't say. You don't owe me this explanation, Elena whispered. Yes, he said quietly. I do, because I owe him more than a life. I owe him proof that he wasn't wrong about us. She left the office that night with her heart in turmoil. Matteo wasn't clean, but he wasn't dirty either. He was something rarer. A man trying to turn darkness into something worth saving. And she wasn't sure anymore if she wanted to escape him or help him. The next night, the docks burned. The flames were visible even from her apartment window. A bloom of orange over the Black River, sirens echoing in the distance. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Alerts from the Vitale Group emergency network. One word repeated over and over. Warehouse 6. The same terminal she'd flagged in her report that morning. She raced to the balcony, staring at the smoke clawing the sky. Her breath caught as she remembered the last face she'd seen there. Luca, the young dockworker who'd brought her coffee every morning, who had called her La Signorina who smiles even when the paperwork is hell. He had been working late tonight. By the time Matteo's car pulled up in front of her building, the sirens were still wailing. He stepped out, his face grim, ash streaking his cuffs. Elena, he said, voice raw. You need to stay inside. What happened? Raphael sent a message, he said. And I'm sending one back. She could see it now, not just the war between uncles and nephews, but the cost of the ideals they both claimed to serve. The city lights blurred through her tears. For the first time, Elena realized what it truly meant to work for Matteo Vitale. His enemies didn't just destroy ledgers. They destroyed lives. Chapter 6. Lines in the Sand. The fire burned for hours. Even after dawn, black smoke still rose from the river district, curling through the skyline like a scar that refused to fade. 3 warehouses gone. 2 men injured. 1 dead. Elena hadn't slept. She sat in her apartment wrapped in silence, staring at the small memorial photo the dockworkers had sent her. Luca, smiling beside a forklift, sun glinting in his hair. He'd been 24. He'd only ever wanted to save enough to buy a fishing boat. And now he was gone because she'd helped a man who'd painted his war in shades of strategy. By mid-morning, the knock came. 3 short raps, polite, official, inevitable. When she opened the door, a badge flashed in her face. Detective Diego Alvarez, Organized Crime Division. Miss Rossi, he said, removing his hat. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your work at Vitale Group. Elena's stomach turned cold. Am I under investigation? Not yet, he said with the faintest smile. But I'd prefer it stays that way. May I come in? He was courteous, the kind of polite that comes from habit, not kindness. His eyes took in everything. The coffee cup on the counter, the open laptop, the fatigue in her face. I assume you've heard about the fire, he began. I read the reports, she said quietly. Alvarez nodded, flipping open a small notebook. We've recovered partial shipping manifests from the site. Some show duplicate entries, identical serials, different destinations. You manage compliance, correct?
Elena hesitated.
Yes. Then you know that's not normal. He leaned forward, voice lower now. I think someone inside your company is manipulating transport routes, possibly funneling illegal goods through legal fronts. If you're aware of that and don't come forward, you'll go down with them when this thing falls apart. Her pulse hammered. She could almost feel the coded ledgers on her laptop, the proof that Matteo had indeed been rerouting shipments, but not to smuggle, to starve the criminal side. How could she explain that to a man who only saw crime in black and white? I have nothing to give you, she said finally. Alvarez studied her for a long moment, then stood. "You're loyal," he said softly. "Maybe too loyal. Be careful who you protect, Miss Rossi. Some debts can't be paid with silence." He left a card on the table. The name gleamed under the morning light. Detective D. Alvarez, Anti-Organized Crime Unit. When the door closed, Elena sank into the chair and pressed her hands over her face. "He's right," she thought. "I'm protecting a man who moves pieces I don't understand." But then she remembered Matteo's voice the night before. "Your father told me there was another way." And for the first time she saw the line, not between good and evil but between chaos and control. Matteo wasn't clean, but Raphael's world was pure blood. Maybe helping Matteo meant fewer fires, fewer funerals. Maybe it meant Luca's death wouldn't happen again. That had to matter. She arrived at Vitale Group late that afternoon. The air inside was brittle. No laughter, no casual talk, just the low murmur of crisis. When she entered Matteo's office, he was standing by the window, jacket off, tie loose, a dark bruise along his jaw from where something, or someone, had struck him during the night. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. "I work here," she replied. He looked at her then, eyes hollow, voice rough. "Luca's family has been contacted. I'll cover all expenses. It shouldn't have happened." "It did happen," she said quietly. "And it's not enough to write checks." Matteo's brow furrowed. She stepped closer. "You want to fix this city? Then start by protecting the people who still believe you can. Move the remaining crews away from the river docks. They're targets now. That would cripple the schedule." "I don't care about the schedule," she snapped. "You said my father believed there was another way. Then prove you do too." The silence that followed was long, heavy, and intimate. Two people standing in the ruins of their ideals, daring each other to keep believing. Matteo finally nodded. "I'll reassign them, and the family, they'll be taken care of properly. No headlines, no spin. Just help." Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you." He gave a faint, humorless smile. "You don't need to thank me. You just drew your first line in the sand." "Maybe," she said softly, "but I think it's one you won't cross." He said nothing, but his silence felt like agreement. That night, Elena walked to her car parked beneath the Vitale Tower. The lot was nearly empty, the air cool and still. She opened the driver's door and froze. Something glinted beneath the rear bumper. She crouched, heart thudding, and saw it. A small black device, no bigger than a matchbox. A tracker. Her breath hitched. She recognized the model. The Vitale guards used Italian-made GPS transponders. This wasn't one of them. The casing was different, cruder, cheaper. Someone else had planted it. Hands trembling, she pulled out her phone, snapping a quick photo before ripping the device free and tossing it into a drain. For a moment she just stood there, the night pressing in around her. Matteo's war was no longer confined to boardrooms or ledgers. Someone else was watching her now, and whoever it was, they weren't playing by any of his rules. Chapter 7: The Vote. The elevator doors opened onto the top floor of the Vitale Tower, and for a heartbeat, Elena almost turned back. The boardroom looked like a war council disguised as a business meeting. Men and women in tailored suits murmuring in Italian and English, papers spread like battle maps. Every chair filled with investors, lawyers, and silent bodyguards who didn't belong in any legitimate boardroom. At the head of the long glass table stood Matteo, composed and immaculate, though the bruise on his jaw still shadowed his skin. Across from him, his uncle Raphael, all silver charm and patient malice. The agenda on the screen read simply, "Vote of Consolidation, Vitale Group Executive Authority." The result of that vote would decide everything: Matteo's legitimacy or Raphael's return to power. Elena sat at the far end, trying to make herself small, invisible, her usual instinct. But as the discussion began, invisibility became impossible. Raphael's voice filled the room, calm and cultured. "My nephew means well," he said smoothly, "but his experiments with transparency have cost us. Profits are down, inspectors crawl over our operations like ants. Investors are nervous." He gestured toward the windows, where the city glittered beneath the overcast sky. And now fires, raids, the death of a worker, the perception of weakness, ladies and gentlemen, kills faster than any bullet. Polite murmurs of agreement followed. Elena felt the heat rise in her chest. She knew the data, she'd run the numbers herself. Matteo's routes were cleaner, leaner, and more profitable. The dirty money had always drained resources. The clean business was thriving. Still, her hands trembled. She could already feel her throat tightening, that familiar surge of panic when all eyes might turn toward her. "Stay quiet," her instinct whispered. "Let Matteo fight this himself." But then Matteo spoke. "My uncle is right about one thing," he said, voice low but steady. "Perception matters. That's why I brought in a new compliance officer to review our operations. Miss Rossi." Every head turned. Elena froze. Matteo looked at her, calm, assured, the faintest nod of encouragement. "You have the floor," he said. Her heart pounded so loudly it drowned out thought. She rose on unsteady legs, gripping the edge of the table. "Good morning," she began, her voice soft but clear. "For the past 6 weeks, I've reviewed the group's operational data. What I found is simple. The cleaner the route, the higher the yield." She tapped the tablet, and the display behind her changed graphs, ledgers, comparison charts. "For every euro lost in off-book shipping, we lost 3 in maintenance, bribes, and seizure risk. Since implementing Mr. Vitale's rerouting system, legitimate profit margins have increased by 24%. That's real revenue, not the kind that disappears when an auditor sneezes." A ripple of laughter broke the tension, small, genuine. Elena steadied her breath. Her anxiety still throbbed under her skin, but she pressed on. "You don't need to believe in morality," she said, glancing at Raphael. "To believe in math. The world is changing. The next generation of contracts, investors, and regulators won't touch operations that smell of corruption. Mr. Vitale isn't cleaning house out of guilt. He's doing it because it's the only strategy that keeps you all rich and free." Silence followed, the heavy kind that holds weight. Then Matteo spoke, quiet but resolute. "You've heard the numbers. You can vote for yesterday or for tomorrow." The vote began. Electronic tablets lit up. One by one, board members entered their choices. For a moment, the numbers leaned toward Matteo. He was winning by 2 votes. And then the world fractured. A thunderous crash echoed from below, followed by screams. Security radios crackled to life. "Lockdown! Lockdown!" Shots fired in the lobby. Chaos rippled through the floor. Glasses shattered. Chairs overturned. Alarms wailed. Matteo barked orders. "Seal the elevators. Move everyone into the conference wing. Rossi!" But she was already moving. The smoke alarm lights flashed red as she grabbed the ledgers from the table and sprinted toward the back stairs. The stairwell was dark, echoing with the distant sound of boots on tile and the muffled thud of gunfire below. She pressed herself against the wall, breathing hard. From the floors above, she could hear Matteo's guards shouting commands, securing exits. Then footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. She turned, clutching the railing. A figure emerged from the shadows, masked, dressed in black tactical gear. Her voice broke out before she could stop it. "Who are you?" The intruder lifted a silenced pistol, not aiming to shoot, but to keep her frozen. Then, through the distortion of the mask, a voice spoke, low, familiar, and unmistakably deliberate. "Nice speech, Elena." Her blood ran cold. The voice leaned closer, almost amused. "Tell me, you working for him, or against him?" Her mind reeled. The same words as the anonymous text. Before she could move, the intruder's gloved hand slammed the stairwell door open and vanished into the smoke. Elena stumbled back, shaking, the echo of her own name still hanging in the air. Whoever they were, they knew her, and this time they weren't just watching. They were inside. Chapter 8: The Knife You Don't See. The smoke had thinned, but the echoes remained. Gunfire swallowed by alarms, shouted orders replaced by static. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears as she pressed herself against the cold concrete wall of the stairwell. Her breath came shallow, every sound amplified, the hiss of smoke sprinklers, the scrape of her shoes against the metal steps. The masked intruder's words still burned in her mind. "Nice speech, Elena. You working for him or against him?" They'd known her name, her voice, her face. This wasn't one of Raphael's men. The discipline was different, sharper, colder. When security finally stormed the floor, Matteo found her leaning against the wall, one hand pressed over her chest. "Elena," he said, grabbing her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "He was here. Not one of yours. He knew my name." Matteo's expression darkened. "Describe him." "Black tactical gear, police grade. Not local." Matteo cursed softly under his breath, switching to Italian. "Fiori men." She blinked. "Fiori from the photo?" He nodded grimly. "He doesn't want my uncle back in charge. He just wants me gone. He thinks the reforms are weakness." The new contracts cut into his smuggling routes. Her stomach twisted. "So he sent someone here?" "To make an example," Matteo said quietly. "Or take leverage." "Leverage." "Marco," he said, his voice softening for the first time in hours. "My brother. Or you." The words hit her harder than she expected. She wasn't a soldier or an heir. She was an assistant, an outsider who'd accidentally wandered into a private war. And yet, someone had decided she was valuable enough to kill for. "Elena," Matteo said suddenly, his tone snapping her back to focus. "We have to move. The building isn't secure." They hurried down a narrow corridor toward the fire exit. The air smelled of metal and smoke. From somewhere below, another explosion, small, contained, rattled the floors. Elena grabbed his arm. "Wait, if we open this, then they'll find us," he finished. "No," she said, pointing to the fire door release panel. "If we trigger it, they'll think we're exiting through the stairwell. It'll pull every guard on this floor. We'll move through the service corridor instead." Matteo hesitated only a second, then smiled, quick, fierce, proud. "You're learning too fast." She slammed the alarm. The shrill, mechanical scream filled the corridor, followed by flashing red lights. "Now!" she shouted. They ran, cutting through the maze of maintenance halls that snaked beneath the building. The emergency lights flickered, bathing them in brief pulses of red and shadow. Behind them, boots thundered toward the stairwell, the perfect misdirection. They burst into a reinforced safe room, steel door, soundproof walls, emergency comms. Matteo secured the lock, his hands trembling for the first time since she'd met him. He leaned against the wall, chest rising and falling, eyes dark and burning. "Elena," he said, voice rough, "you shouldn't have been part of this." "Neither should you," she shot back. For a long moment, neither spoke. The adrenaline between them was thick, electric. Fear turned into something dangerously close to tenderness. Then softly Matteo said, "You see now, don't you? What this costs?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He stepped closer, his expression raw. stripped of the calm control he always wore. "I can keep you safe," he said quietly, "but I can't keep you innocent." The truth of it settled like gravity. Elena felt it. The shift, the moment she stopped being just a witness and became part of the game. She whispered, "Then stop pretending I am." Their eyes locked, the air between them taut, unspoken. Not romance yet, but the inevitability of it. Then Matteo's phone buzzed. A single message. He looked down, jaw tightening. "Fiore men are gone," he said. "But someone leaked the route to them. Someone inside." Elena's phone buzzed next. She glanced down, Detective Alvarez. She answered. "Detective?" His voice came through, low and urgent. "Miss Rossi, are you somewhere safe?" "I think so," she said, eyeing Matteo. "I need you to listen carefully," Alvarez said. "The tracker we pulled from your car, it's police issue. It wasn't ours." "What do you mean, not yours?" "I mean one of my officers is dirty. He's been feeding intel to Matteo Vitale." Her breath caught. "Raphael, get out of that building, Miss Rossi," Alvarez said. "Whatever's happening, it's bigger than a family feud now." The line went dead. Elena looked up at Matteo, his eyes already on her, reading the fear she didn't have time to hide. "Who was that?" he asked. "The police," she whispered. "And they're working for your uncle." For the first time since she'd met him, Matteo's expression broke. Shock, grief, and fury all in one exhale. Then he whispered something she'd never heard from him before. "Dio ci aiuti." God help us. Chapter 9, The Betrayal. The message came at dawn, simple, untraceable, brutal. "We have Marco. Trade the girl and the ledgers by midnight, or the river takes him." Raphael's seal was stamped at the bottom, embossed, formal, obscene in its civility. Elena read it twice, her throat dry, the words pressing down like stones. Across the room, Matteo stood motionless, hands clenched, staring out the window as the skyline turned from night to bruised gray. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, too steady. "My uncle has gone too far." "He's gone exactly far enough," Elena said quietly. "He knows you won't risk your brother." Matteo turned, eyes dark. "He won't hurt Marco as long as he thinks he can use him, but he'll destroy you if he gets the ledgers. And if I don't give them? He'll make you the villain," Matteo said. "He'll leak falsified books, trace them to your login, and tell every investigator you created the clean cover for a laundering scheme. You'll be his perfect scapegoat." Her stomach twisted. It wasn't just her career or safety. It was her name, her father's name, everything she tried to rebuild. That afternoon, the world shrank to decisions and consequences. Elena sat in her office, the light from her monitor painting lines across her face. The walls seemed to close in as she stared at the coded ledgers, the compliance roadmap, the proof of everything Matteo was trying to do. If she handed them over, Marco lived, and she lost everything. If she didn't, Marco died, and the reforms her father had believed in would crumble. She pressed her palms to her eyes. There has to be another way. When Matteo appeared at her door, she didn't let him speak. "There is a third option," she said. He stopped mid-step.
I'm listening.
She turned the monitor toward him. "The compliance roadmap. It's public-facing, the same file I presented at the board meeting. We can use it as bait. We schedule a fake data transfer in the municipal archives. A government building, open spaces, multiple exits, surveillance on every floor." Matteo's eyes narrowed. "You want to use you as bait? I'm the one they want," she said. "They'll come for me and for the ledgers. We give them both." He stepped closer, jaw tight. "You're not trained for this." She met his gaze evenly. "Neither was my father when he pulled your brother out of a burning car." A silence stretched, sharp, painful. Then Matteo exhaled, the fight draining from him. "Fine," he said softly. But you don't go alone. I have to look like I am, she countered. If they see you, they'll kill Marco before we blink. You'll watch from the feeds. Control the exits, route the cameras. When they move, you move. For a moment, the old distance between them vanished, replaced by something rawer. Elena, he said quietly, you do understand that if this fails. I know, she said, voice steady. Then at least I'll fail doing something right. The archive building smelled of paper and dust, a forgotten cathedral of bureaucracy. Marble floors, long corridors, the faint hum of old fluorescent lights. Elena arrived at dusk, her pulse drumming in time with her footsteps. The flash drive in her pocket was a decoy, empty but identical. Her hair was tied back, her expression calm, but her fingers shook. Somewhere above, Matteo's team was watching, hidden in a van across the square, hijacking city cameras, rerouting every feed to track Raphael's men. At precisely 7:15, the door at the far end opened. 3 men entered, 2 in dark coats, 1 in police uniform. The officer's badge caught the light. Elena's breath caught. Detective Alvarez's words echoed in her head. A dirty cop, working for Raphael. So this was him. She approached the central table, keeping her posture neutral. The man in front smiled. Not Raphael, but his lieutenant, a shadow with a charming grin. Miss Rossi, he said, setting down a briefcase. We appreciate your cooperation. The code, please. Elena slid the decoy drive across the table. Marco first. He chuckled. Not how this works. The officer stepped forward to collect the drive, and at that moment Matteo's plan triggered. The entire corridor lit up with red laser dots. Targeting beams from security drones Matteo's team had patched into the city grid. Every camera in the building turned toward the exchange. Elena caught a glimpse of Matteo's voice in her earpiece, calm but urgent. Hold position. They're exposed. We've got faces on record. The officer swore and reached for his gun. Too late. Police alarms blared through the building as real units flooded the square. Chaos exploded. Elena ducked behind the table as glass shattered and boots thundered. The lieutenant shouted orders, flipping the table over for cover. Just as a shadow appeared behind him. Raphael, impeccably dressed, untouched by the chaos, a devil in silk. He raised one hand and the shooting stopped. Enough, he said. You've made your point, nephew. Matteo's voice in her earpiece cut off interference. Raphael smiled at her, calm and precise. I admire your courage, Miss Rossi. You remind me of your father. Her pulse spiked. You knew my father? Knew him? Raphael's tone softened. He was one of us. He reached into his coat and produced a document. Old, yellowed, folded into thirds. He laid it on the overturned table like an offering. Elena hesitated, then stepped forward and unfolded it. A loan agreement, dated 15 years ago. Rossi Freight Lines, creditor Vitale Holdings. Her father's signature at the bottom. Raphael's voice was silk and poison. Your father's last expansion, the one that collapsed? It was funded with our money. Matteo never told you that. He didn't want to tarnish his sainted memory. She felt the blood drain from her face. He chose us, Miss Rossi. He always did. The only difference is, you're still pretending you didn't. The room spun. She heard Matteo shouting through the comms, distorted by static. Security closing in. Sirens wailing. But all she could see was the signature. Her father's handwriting, bold and familiar, on paper that smelled of dust and betrayal. Her father, who'd told her to trust Matteo. Her father, who'd said, if they come, ask for Matteo Vitale. And now, for the first time, she understood what he hadn't said. He'd been one of them. The floor dropped from beneath her beliefs. The only thing left standing was the lie she'd built her loyalty on. Chapter 10: Ashes Between Us. The smoke of the city still lingered in the glass. Elena hadn't gone home. She couldn't. Every corridor of Vitale Tower still smelled of fire and antiseptic, of things half-burned and hastily restored. Across the floor, Matteo stood near the window, jacket off, tie loosened, a man both rebuilt and broken. He hadn't spoken since the night of the exchange, and she hadn't forgiven him. Finally, she broke the silence. "You knew," she said quietly, "about my father." Matteo's reflection stared back from the glass, tired, older. "I found out after he died. I thought I was protecting you. By lying." Her voice cracked. "By letting me believe he was clean, that we were fixing something new." He turned then, the controlled calm in his eyes splintered. "I didn't lie to hurt you. I lied because I needed you to believe in this. In me. Without that faith, none of this would have worked." Elena laughed. A soft, bitter sound. "You wanted my faith so badly you built it on a lie." Neither spoke for a long time. Outside, the sunrise bled gold through the haze. Beautiful, distant, indifferent. Finally, Matteo said, "Raphael is gone. The system that fed him is collapsing. You still have the ledgers, you can walk away clean." "I'm not sure I am clean anymore." He stepped closer, then stopped, as if afraid of what came next. "You're the only one who ever tried to be." Her breath caught, "Not forgiveness, not yet." But the edge dulled slightly. "Then prove it," she said. "No more secrets. No more saving me from truths I deserve to know." He nodded, the smallest surrender he'd ever made. And that was how the rebuilding began, not with apologies but with honesty. Chapter 11: The Beginning That Cost Everything. Weeks passed like recovery does, uneven, cautious, but real. Elena returned to work under the quiet weight of transition. She led compliance audits that rewired half the company. Matteo met with prosecutors behind closed doors, offering evidence that would gut the Vitale network from the inside out. Every day they built something new on the bones of what they destroyed. Together, but not yet whole. Late one evening, Elena entered Matteo's office. He was alone, the city light painting lines across his desk. "You're late," he said without looking up. "I was rewriting the charter," she replied. "Clause 47, the one that lets a single shareholder override a transparency audit. It's gone." He looked up, surprised. "That's been there for decades. That's why it's gone." Silence stretched, but this time it wasn't hostile. It was respect, earned through pain. He leaned back. "You could run this company without me." "I don't want to," she said softly. "But I could. That's the difference now." For the first time, Matteo smiled. Not the sharp one she'd known, but something unguarded. "You once said clean didn't mean naive," he said. "What does it mean now?" She met his gaze. "It means we stop pretending we're better than the world we're trying to fix, and change it anyway." He rose, walked to the window beside her. The skyline shimmered. The same city, somehow altered. "I can't undo what I've done," he murmured. "I'm not asking you to," she said. "Just don't hide from it again." Their hands brushed, tentative, human. Not absolution, understanding. Epilogue: Compliance Phase 2. Months later, a small press release went out quietly at dawn. Vitale Group announces full corporate amnesty initiative, Internal Transparency Act enacted. Elena signed the statement herself. Matteo countersigned. Downstairs, the lobby smelled of espresso and rain, not fear. Detective Alvarez stopped by to deliver final reports. Raphael's case officially closed. Fiore extradited. "Doesn't feel like a clean win," he said. "The best ones never do." When he left, she walked back to the window where it had all begun. Matteo was there already, hands in pockets, watching the city pulse with life. "We started this with lies," she said. He glanced at her. "And we end it with work."
Elena nodded.
"Then let's get back to it." Outside, sirens and church bells echoed together. Not warning this time, but rhythm. The sound of a city learning, at last, to breathe.